One of my favorite ways of actually producing videos, I guess, is, through online social websites where, I'm actually talking to some folks. We're just, talking about different things and such, and pretty much it veers off into various conversations, various topics of interest. And I think when you actually sit back and really think about it, great videos come from those type of discussions, which is pretty much what I'm going to be talking about in this particular one. We were talking about a lot of things having to do with, black culture, and that it's not really actually in existence as we would think. Even though we see a lot of black artists producing music, doing movies and everything like that. They're saying that there's like a great absence now of what's actually becoming, what we would know of as black culture. It's like what they're saying is like it's actually being intermingled, and actually in some cases blacks are being replaced at a very alarming rate. So when I got to thinking about it, I said, you know what? I think that would actually make a very good video. So I wanted to kind of do a video to kind of maybe kind of expound on that and kind of just, take it, and just kind of examine this and take my time as I dissect and go through this particular topic. But anytime, we're actually talking about, the black culture, it's like we can actually, I guess, sum it up as actually saying that, it's pretty much the way we would actually view blacks as actually contributing to the development of America as we know it. We know blacks actually have a lot of to things. They contribute a lot to society in the forms of the things that we use every day. Even some of the things that's actually been in use, like in hospitals. Out in the society, like street lights, and all kind of things that blacks have actually contributed into building and actually using the things that we do today. But a lot of times, we actually tend to really not really see much of that particular recognition, or I should say a lot of the contributions and everything that blacks have made to society. It's actually being replaced, and it's actually being replaced as if blacks never had anything to do with it in the first place. Again, when we're talking about again the overall achievements and everything that blacks have done, it spans a whole lot of things. It actually goes and really covers a whole lot of details, and actually that's something that really a lot of, or I should say today's African American young people really don't know much about. And I think it's actually very important that we as African Americans sit down with our younger generations and actually talk about these type of things, because again it's important that they learn the history of quote unquote their people, to know how important they are to the development of the American Revolution, pretty much the building up of America. Because again, we know that America is made up of a lot of people, not just whites, not just blacks, not just Asian. It's a collective effort of everybody. But again, since this is African American month, Black History Month, I really felt the need, I guess, to go and examine this particular subject and kind of talk about it in further detail. But anytime we're actually talking about the black culture, we always have to really go back and really understand, for the most part, when one says, okay, the black culture, the first things that actually that I know that conjure up in my mind when I'm thinking about it is, the marching and the protests that, that was done, that was actually a very frequent activity that was done by African America post-slavery. And for the most part, this is where blacks are actually beginning to become free sovereign individuals, where they're actually being able to go out there and actually make things happen on their own. And again, because of this being post-slavery, they're still having to really face a lot of obstacles and actually able to become seen as being an equal person in society, an equal functioning individual. And that's pretty much what I say. That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I'm actually thinking about black culture. The fact that we actually having to always, fight for the simple things. Having to fight just to, again, be seen as being equal, being capable of actually being able to hold our own. Again, the Jim Crow era was very heavily prevalent back in those times in the 60s, 70s, and everything like that. And actually, in a sense now, it's still being enforced today, even though it's actually being hid under the carpet or swept under the carpet, so to speak, which is not something that a lot of people would want to talk about. But again, anybody who's black and in America pretty much knows that racism still exists. It's just one of those facts of life that we have to deal with. But one thing about it is that, again, we actually, develop our own policies, our own people, our own organizations to kind of protect the interests of black folks. That's where you have the Black Panthers and all of these other, pro-black groups that actually, came into existence to protect the ideology and the philosophies and the living conditions, and the treatment of black folks, and for the most part, they did that to the best of their ability. We still have, a lot of the, descendants or grandchildren or so of those original Black Panther leaders that are living today. So for the most part, the Bible tells us there's nothing new under the sun, and for the most part, we still have groups that are out there to still protect the interests of black folks, and for the most part, I don't think that's going to go away, especially in the climate that we're living in today. But for the most part, again, black culture, which is what we're talking about, again, it consists of many things. Again, as I stated, to me, that's the fight for equal rights and such, and then again, we have that all staple pride of, being black, which is, of course, that afro. I love the afro. I love it. I actually have it myself, which was, again, given to us, or actually it was something that we developed to actually show that we would not actually become, I guess, what, we would not actually conform to white society. That's pretty much what the afro was, and that's pretty much what it stood for. And again, I think it's a neat hairstyle. I say it again, I have it myself. I on occasion like to kind of pick out my fro a little bit and kind of sport it a little bit. Then sometimes I want to put it away and do other things. But again, that's one of those things that we actually took pride in, is as far as black culture is concerned. With the men, we had it too. We did our thing with it as well. And for the most part, it was something that we actually can say that was all our own. Nobody actually tried to imitate us. Nobody actually wanted to be involved in that particular style, because that was something that we developed and we actually wanted to have as our own, as actually being seen as being black and being proud of who we are as African American folks, as our culture. Again, going and actually just, traveling through this particular event, in time, again, we also developed our own sound as far as music is concerned. We actually had a lot of them with, Diana Ross and, her crew, and Ray Charles, and a lot of other people that actually, had a lot of melodic sounds of the 70s and, 50s and 60s and stuff that pretty much was actually attributed to black culture. For the most part, there's a lot of things, that blacks were actually involved in, even though they were not allowed to be involved in many things. But a lot of things actually came about through persistence, through doors opening and such like that. Record deals, things that was being done back in those particular time frames that actually paved way for these particular artists, to get up and show America that, black folks are talented as well, and we can actually look just as good, when doing the exact same thing that white folks do, or I should say white society, for the most part. And like I said, it didn't actually even stop at music. We actually began, to really start to, produce our own films, actually, again, star, and have a cast that was all black. White folks was doing that for quite some time, and it really took a while for the opportunities to come along for the black culture to actually go in and actually do their own thing, where they would actually have people or black audience that would go out and see their work, and it was actually good movies. I mean, like I say, you don't really see much of those things actually being done today, with everything that's going on with the climate, that's the racial climate that's changing. But we actually started to see a very big, I should say, racial integration, or I should say the cultures started to really intermingle, I would say, during the disco era. For the most part, disco actually brought out, a lot of people, of different races and such. But, the main thing that we actually saw, is where you would have black folks and white folks getting together on the dance floor for the most part. It wasn't something that happened overnight. You would start to see, black folks out there dancing, then you would start to really see a little bit of white folks coming in there and, joining in, on the dance floor, like on Soul Train or something like that, and you would actually start to really see these type of interminglings going on. And that's pretty much, I think, where black culture really started to really lose its effectiveness. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but I think, in my opinion, that's where we actually really started to really see an intermingling, where you actually start to really see whites interact with blacks, that, on a friendly level, where it wasn't actually where it was a master slave level. They actually intermingled on a friendly level. And actually, this was actually, in my opinion, the first time that we would actually see this in public without there actually being any type of quote unquote hostility involved in it, from either side. And because of that, again, they actually, gave way to a lot of other things that happened in the 70s, like shows like, Welcome Back, Kotter, and, other type of, series, I would say situational comedies, if you will, it gave way to those type of programmings during that particular time, and it didn't even stop on regular primetime television. It actually, again, spilled over into, the sports, where you would actually have whites, playing with blacks and all that other type of stuff, where they were actually beginning to, get along, I should say. They were actually, the cultures were starting to really come together to be one cohesive running unit. And, in that particular aspect, I guess it was a lot actually to, to take in, because again, during the 70s and such, even though we started to see a great integration of cultures where black culture was not really, quote unquote, 100% black anymore, as if it really was in the first place, but it just, kind of stayed with me here. We started to see a great intermingling where, activities were not just enjoyed by black folks, so to speak, or white folks, so to speak. We started to see a lot of it just, being enjoyed by both races. You know what I'm saying? And for the most part, again, we started to see a lot of different movies and everything continue to be displayed, on the screen, where, blacks are starting to become, more prominent on television, roles in movies and such that, that was once consisted, to be just a white person thing. You start to see, even though we didn't make our appearance, all at once, where you actually had a group of black folks coming in and starring in movies all at once, you would start to see like one person, black, and then they would actually give way to other black folks and stuff like that, where it would become, almost a normal thing to see a black person interacting with a white person on screen, which was almost something that you would never have seen happen, in earlier eras of, media. But again, we have to understand, that was a very big deal. And again, that's where, again, the 70s, again, I'll say, is where we begin, in my opinion, to lose, or I should say the extinction of black culture started. Now, when we actually, kind of fast forward into the 80s, that's when we actually start to see a more, I would say, we start to see actually the black culture actually kind of being diminished even a little bit more. With, again, the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson actually coming out and making a name for himself, and everybody pretty much in every race, nation, and creed pretty much knew who Jackson was and the Jackson 5s. I mean, even though they started off, as, a group of brothers singing, Michael Jackson was highly favored and actually broke off and did his own thing, and for the most part, he was a talented young man, and the thing about it is that I think that he actually was, I would say, he stood for, actually, I would say that he was kind of allegorical, meaning that he was actually put here to really bring the races more together. And because of that, again, black culture, again, began to become more and more transformed and more diluted into pop culture, entities that was actually, again, enjoyed by mostly white folks. That pretty much, again, was a major turning point in black culture, where you actually start to see, again, different type of 80s programming that came about, where, again, you start to see more blacks and whites interacting together and such like that. So I think, for the most part, his music actually really lend way, to pave the way for the black culture to become more and more diluted into white society. Again, you had a lot of people that actually enjoyed his music. So again, that was only, quite natural for black folks, for that to actually be a segue for white America to kind of become more involved in, the interests of things that we may have considered that was, quote unquote, black. But again, traveling and navigating through the 80s, I mean, again, we actually had, a lot of sitcoms that were developed in the 80s, that actually portrayed, black families and such like that, in different lights. But one of the main ones that I actually see that actually really broke the mold, and really, I would say that kind of squashed black culture, I guess, in almost pieces, I would say, is the production of, as we know of, the Cosby Show. In the Cosby Show, of course, depicted, this, middle class family, upper middle class family that's, I guess, that was in the state of New York, where, the father was a doctor, a pediatrician, I think, and the mom was a lawyer, and pretty much everything, the whole family, of course, went about their daily business and such. For the most part, they actually wanted to say that that was, I guess the typical African American family, which I think is a complete lie because, again, blacks were still struggling just like they are to this day and time. You didn't hardly see a black doctor on the scene, living that well. I mean, so for them to sit there and say that that was the typical way that African Americans lived, I would say that you're lying 2 times. But anyway, I digress. But for the most part, I think that this particular show actually broke the mold as far as actually, kind of, I guess wanting blacks to do their own thing and wanting whites to do their own thing. Because on his show, he would always have, white guests, who would, who they would portray as being neighbors, or maybe or portray as actually being friends of his daughter Rudy Huxtable, that sort of thing, and sometimes they'll even invite their parents over, to sit down and do different episodes and such like that, for the most part. So here we go again, an infiltration and the dilution of the black culture, full stream ahead. But I think with the way the racial tensions and the racial climate was going, I think, for the most part, blacks were still, still trying to come into their own and still try to, make something of their own. Because again, you still, had the rap industry that actually started out, hip hop, 80s hip hop that was coming out. And for the most part, you had black artists and everything coming out, and doing their own thing. But I think that still, you still had a lot of integration. You had a lot of imitators that was actually trying to do, what the black folks were doing. So for the most part, I think that, Bill Cosby actually wanted to give something to the black community that could be theirs and theirs alone, where they could not be any imitation. And I think that was the brain and the thought process behind this spin-off show, which is, of course, that we know of is As a Different World. This is where it depicted Denise Huxtable going off to a historically black college, a fictional historical black college named Hillman. And for the most part, this is pretty much a spinoff, as I said, that was actually meant for nothing more than the black households, for the most part. For the plot and everything was well done. It featured blacks in an area that was not actually really seen before in America, which is in an area of higher learning, which was very important because he, even though, he wanted to actually give something to the black community that was all their own, he also wanted to actually make it where they actually looked like they were doing something productive. Because again, we still, are coming out of the era during that time where people still had negative stereotypes about blacks and the fact that they sell drugs and are unproductive and come from the ghetto and all this other type of stuff. So for the most part, this was something that he wanted to give to kind of keep, the black culture with something, that they can say, okay, this is something, this is ours. We can actually run it, and actually it'll be all of our own. And for the most part, during this entire run, because it did run for a couple of seasons, I really did not see too many white people in that particular, this particular spinoff of the Cosby Show. Again, I would say the only 2 people who I would say that was actually really, or I would say the very first faces of someone who happens to not be black that I saw on that show was actually the one that's actually there to the left there, that girl who was actually playing as Maggie, I think that was her name, for the most part. And she was, I guess, kind of like a regular on the Different World only during its first season. Because after the first season, she did not come back, for whatever reason. I don't know if she was written off or, if, I don't know why she did not appear, in subsequent seasons. But, again, as it went on, more characters were actually being, added to the cast, black characters of now. So what? And I think that the thought process behind it was just to keep it, to keep something all of their own, so blacks can actually have something to be proud of, and can be shown, okay, we are intelligent people, and that nobody can really imitate us. Not about this, this is something that we have, and we're going to run with it. In later seasons, they actually had another white fellow that actually became, I wouldn't say he was a regular, but he actually made a few guest appearances on subsequent episodes, where it was one, I think, who actually played as Kim's boyfriend, in later seasons and such like that. So for the most part, those were the only 2 that I actually think that that actually had, like, I guess, reoccurring roles, I guess you would say, on that particular show. Of course, with that also, too, you actually had other spin-offs or other comedies also that actually dealt with African Americans that are living the high life, so to speak, such as, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We all know pretty much about that and the storyline that goes behind that. But what we have to understand too is that one of the major breaking points, and I think one of the major things that actually that we had as African Americans is the ability to express ourselves through music. Even if it was music that was from the 60s, 70s, or 80s, we always thought that that was something that we could always fall back on, and that no one, nowhere could actually be able to catch up to us, so to speak, in our way of how we express ourselves through, harmonic music. And and that's what happened, in the 90s. Again, late 80s, early 90s came in, and we actually had an array of new faces that were coming onto the scene. New people that were being discovered, coming out with their, music and everything. And I actually enjoyed, 90s music. They call that the New Jack Swing era. I just love that. I really do. I just could go on and on about this all day long, or whatever the case may be. But, they actually, again, the black culture actually, developed and had all of these different artists coming out, making appearances on Soul Train, MTV Yo, and all these other type of popular programming during that time, to introduce themselves to the world, and let them know that they are out there making music, and of course because of that, that we actually had to have some people that actually wanted to actually do the same thing, but they actually wanted to let them know that, hey, you black folks are not the only folks that actually have a harmonic sound and actually can have a sound that's worth listening to. And see, one of the things about it is that that's when I would say they started creating a lot of the boy bands of the 1990s. Of course, there were girl groups too, but I'm kind of focusing this on on the male side of the spectrum. And that's where you actually had some of the earlier artists that came out, like Backstreet Boys, and groups like that. I never was actually a fan of Backstreet Boys or whatever. I would actually on occasion would run across something, where they would sing or something. But I mean, I would listen to maybe, a couple of minutes of it, and I would just go about my business, because again, that particular group did not appeal to me. They did not actually they did not actually, as I would say, represent my interest, so to speak. At least that's how I was thinking at the time. I don't have anything against white folks. I'm not racist, but I'm just kind of just giving it to you from my perspective. So just give me a break. But, continuing on with this, again, you actually had, like a competition, where you had, people coming out, groups that are being formed almost overnight, signing record deals and everything, with the same management companies that were producing music, with these black groups, going in and signing people, and stuff like that. It was almost like it was just like, I don't know, a competition type of thing. But again, we started to see a major shift again in black culture because of the type of music that was being done. So now here we go. You got a lot of people, that are coming in that are wanting to get in to produce that particular harmonic sound that would appeal to the black ears, so to speak. And like I say, again, you had a lot of the early boy groups that were actually able to actually do that. And they did it, and for the most part, they actually enjoyed doing it. And hold on just for one moment. Sorry about that, but yeah, as I was saying, again, when I go back and think about my earlier times, these are a lot of groups that I actually saw that were actually trying to, take on and imitate the sounds of black voices, and and try to, and they did a great job. I mean, like I say, I'm not going to sit there and actually downplay the groups just because they're not black. But again, again, when you actually started to see these groups, and you would think, and if you would close your eyes, you would swear that you were hearing black folks singing, and that's pretty much where we actually started to see black culture actually starting to slowly drift away. But there is one group that I think that really that kind of took the ball as far as actually blowing them, blowing it and actually giving it to us like a typical black group would do. And I don't know if you all know this particular group, but they are called, Color Me Bad. And I'm trying to tell you, hands down, I have pretty much all of their songs. Like I said, I would have to give it to them. These are like the very talented individuals, very talented, very harmonic, very seductive, very passionate. I mean, if you would close your eyes, you would think by that you are talking to or actually hearing someone from the African American persuasion, so to speak. Hold on just a minute. Wow, a lot of people must want to get a hold of me. But anyway, as I was going on and trying to say, hopefully I can be able to get through this video without any further interruptions. But as I was saying, yeah, that is one group. Color Me Badd is one group that actually knows how to, I guess, to give that harmony, kind of like, what we would actually kind of think of when we're actually hearing a male group of, a male black vocal group. And they actually, did it quite well, for the most part. I think they were actually one of the most popular male groups in the 1990s, for the most part. One of my favorites. I don't know about you, because I know I have a lot of collections of different 90s R&B music, a library, if you will, of different types of music. And they are up there, in that particular one where I would listen to. I have a lot of other ones like SWV and all them other ones, But again, these are one of my ones that are up there. And I listen to them from time to time, There's nothing wrong with actually reminiscing, the nice clean ones. It kind of gives you a mood of the 90s. I love the 90s era music. But again, another group that came out that was actually developed in the 90s too, as we know of also, is NSYNC. And NSYNC actually, again, they delivered the, typical, as I would say, white boy type of music. But for some reason, they actually, took a liking to Justin Timberlake. And that's pretty much where he actually got his beginnings, singing like that. And I think as time went on, he began to kind of shed that, as a lot of people would say, white boy image, and actually began to really come into his own, where he was actually beginning to really, sing, and actually handle himself in a more mature manner, not actually going out there and actually, being a part of the group, where he was actually able to express himself as a man, through his music and through different messages and such. These days now, again, a lot of people would actually, I guess the African American culture would actually more readily accept him as one of their own, because he's actually developed different sounds and everything that, for the most part, is appealing to black folks' ears. So for the most part, again, they look at him as another brother, from another mother. But again, I digress. But he actually shared the image, and now the music that he's producing now is actually more favorable now, where he actually has a large black following for the most part. So here we go again, black culture again is shifting, where now, we have new faces that are producing, as we would say, black music. And for the most part, there's not really much that you can do about it. It's just something that is just interesting for you to just sit back and just really be a witness to, because again, it's like we're already, a small part of the United States that make, a small part of the United States population. So now even our music now is beginning to become extinct, because now we have different people of different races that are actually able to imitate and actually even sound like black folks, as far as, producing music. I mean, nothing against it. The music is good. I have no problem with it, and I have no problem, rocking, nodding to it every now and then. It's just you can't speak bad about it if he knows what he's doing. But for the most part, it's something that is just truly interesting to look at and actually be a part and a witness to. But one of the main things that I think that really actually aggravates a lot of black folks, and I said I have to say that I'm actually included in that, is that when you actually ask the typical black person to name their favorite recording artist, their favorite black recording artist of all time, the first images that they will actually see, of course, depending on who you listen to, or or who you ask the question to, for the most part, the first person or if that they would say, especially if it's a female, is going to be this particular person. And see, my thing about it is that, first of all, I don't look at her as actually being a representation of black music. I mean, again, if you go into her racial background, she has a mixture of all different types of things. But I guess because she actually has African American as part of that, I guess the one drop rule, I guess, applies in this particular case, which, is something of another video. But it aggravates me that, we don't recognize black music, or actually, go back and really reference blacks for actually producing and actually giving out, their hard work, and actually, giving them credit for the work that they do. She does not represent African American or black culture. I want folks to understand that. I don't have any type of ill feelings against her. She does her own thing, and I'm pretty sure, she's going to continue to do her own thing. But a lot of people have got to understand is that she does not represent black culture. The only thing she represents is pretty much, a mixture of different things, just like President Obama. A lot of them want to refer to him as the black president, but he is not a black president. He is a mix with a whole bunch of different stuff. But one thing about it, again, is that black women now are being replaced by women who are like her. And of course, again, along that same line, you have black men that are being, replaced by people that looks like this, in today's media and movies and everything else. Or if not that, then you actually have them looking like this. I mean, so like I said, it's really getting a bit aggravating, and it's like an insult that now black as we know it is actually being extinct. It's like it's slowly being pushed out, where now we're actually being programmed to look at somebody else who is light, bright, and almost white to represent black folks and the black culture. But one thing about it is that, again, even though that's the case with a lot of things that we listen to and even in the foods that we eat, we still have to know and understand that it doesn't matter how light America wants to picture a black person to be. We really pretty much know the truth on where black culture is and where it actually comes from. All right, I know this video was kind of a bit broken in different pieces, and I had to get up and move about or whatever, but just kind of understand what I'm saying. This is not something to kind of say black pride or anything, but this is just a culture shift that I'm actually seeing, and really it's very interesting. I'm not saying that I like it, but it's very interesting to see, again, how diluted black culture is and how it's actually being pushed out and how it's being replaced with other things. Peace out, folks.